Welcome to Up and About with Peekskill United. We have a great show for you tonight. Our first segment, we have a conversation with Frank Catalina, candidate for District 1 for the Westchester County Legislature. And our second segment is Inside City Hall, as we've done in the past. Hi, I'm Bob Sullivan.
Hi, I'm Frank Catalina.
Hi, I'm Joe Torres.
Okay. As we mentioned, our first segment tonight is a conversation with Frank Catalina. Welcome, Frank. Thanks for coming by.
Thanks for inviting me.
Welcome, Mayor.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Good
Joe.
to see you again.
Just to get all the boo birds out of the way, yes, it is true, all you people out in TV land, Joe and I did run with Frank for office 2 years ago. Get over it, okay? We're here to have a conversation about Frank Catalina, candidate for District 1 for the county legislature. Frank, I noticed on your Facebook page, you're out and about all over the place, in Yorktown, Continental Village. What are the people telling you? What are you hearing when you're going door to door?
Well, we're hearing good things. You know, people are tired of northern Westchester being the brunt, carrying the water for the rest of the county. When it's time to give out resources, most of the resources for the county go below or south of 287. That's the general feeling. You know, I've thought about it a long time as mayor of Peekskill. Peekskill is literally the dumping ground of Westchester County. We have the sanitary sewer district for northern Westchester. We have a garbage resource recovery plant right behind this building, where every piece of garbage in Westchester County is trucked up here every day and burnt. And you know, when I was younger, when that opened up, we used to get a layer of soot on our cars and houses. They have better scrubbers nowadays, but still, we burn all the garbage. We don't get resources for that. We don't get major payments. And you know, we have the AIM pipeline that comes through here, and we have Indian Point, the nuclear power plant. You know, back in the 50s when they were looking for a place to put a nuclear power plant, you know, I'm sure they looked in a lot of different places before they shoved it down our throats up here in northern Westchester. So, you know, it's happening again with the homeless shelters. They closed 2 or 3 down county, and they look to take our small 15-bed facility that has served Peekskill well for over 30 years and try to change it into a 55 or 60-bed facility. I think every community has an obligation to take care of its homeless problem, if they have a problem. Peekskill does its share. Our 12 to 15 bed facility has served Peekskill well and the homeless population in Peekskill for over 30 years. I don't think we need a 55 or 60 bed facility. So that's...
You mentioned a whole bunch of issues that the county gets involved in. A lot of people don't know what the county does. I mean, they know there's somebody down in White Plains, but you went through them. Garbage and waste management, homeless and human services is a county responsibility. Certainly have county police to a certain degree. And these are all things that really do impact on our lives. So getting with the homeless issue, like you said, Peekskill has had a small facility tending to its own homeless. The issue, though, of course, when they tried to move the venue, you know, that's just a tough question no matter what. So how does that get resolved, and what do you see, if any, the county's role in that, in helping out or helping the shelter relocate or do whatever it needs to do?
Well, I think number one, they have to have more transparency. The more they tried to hide it, the more riled up the community got. You have people in this community who never attended a meeting, never protested anything, coming out because their property values were threatened, their communities were threatened, their neighborhoods were threatened, and it's just not a good situation when the county hides behind secrecy and tells these private organizations like CHOP that they're going to funnel $1 million to them to renovate a building or to buy a building. So that's number one. Number two, I don't think they should be closing shelters down county in Yonkers and White Plains.
And then send everybody up here.
And then having the contingency plan that we're going to take care of them up here in Peekskill.
And that was some of the things I heard, that some of the homeless shelters were closing down, and they were sending people that were getting, you know, that were homeless down there, sending up to here to Peekskill, because some of the shelters were closed down there. And I think that's, you know, a lot of people got aggravated with that it wasn't just, we weren't taking care of Peekskill anymore. We were taking care of everybody in the county. And, you know, even some people getting out of prison were getting sent up here because they had no place to stay, and we were taking care of them.
So what's the solution?
Well, the solution is more transparency. The solution is more aggressive representation for District 1. For District 9, Bob Outhouse and Catherine Borgia will be facing off in an election. And better representation out in Michael Grace's district. Mike Kaplowitz is the county legislator now, and he was a very sensible legislator. He reached out, he sat with Republicans on issues, he sat with the majority, and he's retiring. So that seat is an open seat, and Mike Grace is running for it. And there's another person named Gashi, I believe, who's running for it. So these people have to be brought in, put them on camera, and ask them where they stand on these issues, and don't let them duck the issue. Yeah. Tell us up front where you stand.
I think that's important that that you talk about what you want to do and where you stand on your issues and stuff like that, because everybody says I want to run, and you don't know what they're all about. That's it. All you hear is, I'm going to do this, but nobody comes out and says this is what I want to do. Yeah. And that's important, I think, when you get to know a person. I mean, I worked with you when you were mayor, and I thought you did an excellent job being a mayor. You turned around a city that was in financial debt, and you fought for the right things. And that's one thing I think that's a quality that you will bring down to the county legislature.
And they're all under construction now. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny that the people that fought against those projects are the ones taking credit and cutting ribbons and puffing their chest out, all for it. I don't care, really. I'm for what's best for Peekskill.
Yeah.
If they want to take the credit for it, fine. But I have the letters from Ginsburg, who says he's building in Peekskill because of me. I have the letters from Carney, the Carney project. So it's I'm comfortable with what I did. People that know, and they can take the credit for it because they're the last people standing. So that's.
I was there with you, and I can tell you, we fought for a lot of things that needed to be done, and I was proud to say I worked with you because I think we did a lot of great things in the city, and I think that's something that you'll bring down to the county, and you'll fight for the people of this, of the county.
One of the things that came out today, the city's budget was put up on the website, and I read it from Yonkers to Croton to look through it. A substantial part of the revenue for the city, and actually I think it was Ms. Talbot bragged about it, is the county sales tax, the revenue, the increase in the county sales tax. I know earlier this year you spoke at length about that, your view on it. What do we do now? We have a sales tax that doesn't only impact property owners, it impacts everybody across the board.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that sales tax was not evenly distributed throughout the county. I mean, Yonkers got a waiver because they have a 1% income tax. I believe Mount Vernon and New Rochelle were also included in that exemption. And those are three big cities that got exemptions. And, my feeling is if Peekskill has to have an income tax to get special consideration from the county, a table or a chair should cost the same amount of money, should bear the same tax throughout Westchester County, and that's not the case now. And it seems like these cities that could not manage their finances and had to resort to imposing a sales tax are getting the benefits now because their sales tax imposed by the county is lower because they mismanage their finances and have a city income tax. I'm sorry, a city sales tax. So it's just a fundamental unfairness, and I will bring it up at every meeting until somebody listens, because it's patently unfair, and somebody has to stand up and fight for it. 4 years of perfect attendance as a mayor, and when something didn't go my way, and a lot of things didn't go my way, I at least made my statement, and on a lot of things we did peel off 1 or 2 votes to make them go through.
Sure.
Otherwise there would be no construction going on in Peekskill.
Yeah, it was tough.
And we're sitting here in a beautiful venue down at the riverfront that would not have gone through had somebody not pushed it.
That's right.
So, across the board, obviously people are benefiting, and it gets back to your initial premise. Northern Westchester is getting dumped on. We're getting imposed with this tax. And certainly guys like Bob Outhouse and Mike Grace. Mike Grace and I had a case together for 3 years. I knew him very well, fought like cats and dogs. But, you're going to be outnumbered. Right now the county legislature is 13 Democrats to 4 Republicans now.
It may change,
It may change 1 or 2 seats perhaps, but it's a tough road. So, how do you expect to make change that way?
Well, just the same way I did as mayor of Peekskill. We bring forth good ideas that are good for District 1 first. We fight for Peekskill, Cortland, Yorktown, Montrose, and Buchanan. That's my number 1 priority. If it's good for them, I'm going to fight for it. Number 2, is it good for the county? If it's good for Westchester County, I can peel off 4 or 5 votes, and I can make it happen. Yeah. I did it here in Peekskill forever. And there was a lot of, play the shell game. What cup is the ball under? And so sometimes I had Joe introduce a project, and I would say I'm against it before they would come over and vote for it. And they never knew where I stood, and we were able to do a shell game. But it's more than just dumping in northern Westchester. I mean, the county has some very serious issues with Parkland. I was down at Blue Mountain. I'm a member of the Rotary. We're having our horse show there. And Blue Mountain is just an absolute disgrace if anybody goes there. The Rotary, that's their prime, fundraiser every year, and now they're up to like $5,000 for us to use the park. I mean, we only make 25 or 30, 7,000. I'm sorry. So that's ridiculous. When I first started in the Rotary 8 years ago, I think it was $500 or $1,000, and it just has been crazy. But the park itself is a disaster. They have to have a beautiful beach there. That's all fenced off. Yeah. Half of the picnic tables are wrecked. The road is an absolute disgrace. I mean, you can only go 3 miles an hour. We have an airport. That's a whole. I can talk to you about the airport. I can talk to you about Playland. I have family members who live in Rockland County who wanted to take their kids, and for the day, I've been talking about Playland. I said you should go there. I haven't had time to get in to check it out myself. Go down there and let me know what you think about it. And my daughter took her kids there, and she said, Dad, it's absolutely a disgrace. And things are run down. And, I personally don't think the county should be in the amusement park business. I just don't think. When the county runs it, you're going to have children of county legislators, children of politicians who need jobs, and you're going to have people not qualified to run the amusement park. Whereas they have a private contract with people that run amusement parks for a living, and they promised to invest pursuant to their contract $10 or $12 million to upgrade things. Yet this county executive and county board are intent on tearing that contract apart. They're in court now because why? Because it was proposed by the prior administration. Even a clock is right. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. And I think the broken clock that they point at, the Astorino administration, is probably right when it comes to the airport, when it comes to Playland. The airport is another thing that should be run by professionals. I don't know one county legislator that's qualified to say what's right or wrong in an airport. You just hate to be on a plane taking off down a runway hitting a pothole because some county legislator's kid or nephew was put in charge of the runway at the airport as a pawn job.
But how does this happen in a county which is the highest per capita income county in the country? How does that happen?
It happens when you stay home and don't vote. This is where we get. We went from basically a majority by the Republicans by only one vote. So that's good, even representation. We don't need a majority. We just need to be within that 2 or 3 vote spread, because then you will peel off people who aren't going to go along with their party just to go along with their party. They're going to go along with what's right for Westchester over party. And that's what we're looking for. It's not so much the party label. It's what's right and what's wrong for Westchester. And when you have people down there more interested in, the county of Westchester doesn't need its own immigration policy. If you want to have an immigration policy, run for Congress, run for the U.S. Senate, or run for president. But don't shove a county immigration policy down our throats. I mean, there was a child rapist convicted from New Jersey. ICE from New Jersey asked to hold that person out on a detainer, and through the county board's law, that person was let go. And back. He's not free totally. I mean, there's a probation and there's some other things, but he's basically free to walk the streets, go wherever he wants to go, and it's just it's insane.
But the county law went even further than not even holding people on detainer. They won't let ICE agents, when they're under control, take custody of them in a county facility, and that's a public safety issue.
It is a public safety issue.
Where they have to get control of the guy and get him out of the facility. So,
and it's not really about picking on immigration. It's about people that committed some serious crimes that need to be. I
mean, people that commit crimes are not treated equally. The statute of justice is supposed to be blind, but Bob, you can tell us if a lawyer commits even the slightest shoplift. I steal a pack of gum from Walmart, I'm going to lose my law license.
Sure.
Yep.
If you're an accountant and you get convicted of a financial crime, you're going to lose your license. So this whole idea that immigrants who commit crimes here are going to get deported and therefore they're not being treated equally, nobody's treated equally. If a priest commits a crime, not only is he going to be more harshly punished than the next guy, but the whole Catholic Church is going to pay a heavy price for that one person. So and I'm not whining over that. I think that to those who are given a lot, like a law license, like an accounting degree, should be treated differently and held to a higher standard. And if you come to this country professing you're coming here for asylum or just to make a better life for your children and to take advantage of the opportunities, and you commit a crime, you're going to lose that opportunity,
Yep.
whether it was illegally obtained or illegally obtained. And it just seems like in this crazy world we live in, up is down, down is up. Laws don't matter if you don't agree with them,
Pick
but
and
they
choose,
matter if you do agree with them.
Yeah.
And if you're a Republican congressman from upstate New York and you're convicted of insider trading, you're not going to get the fine, the standard fine, and look at your record of no arrests for your whole life. But you're going to lose your seat in Congress. You're going to go to jail, and you're going to be on probation for many years. It's so people are not treated equally by the criminal justice system, and that's not a wrong thing. To those that are given more is expected, and that's a fact of life. Everybody believes it. People, they can say, well, the rich have the better lawyers and they're better able to defend themselves, but that's a bunch of cockamamie. It doesn't mean anything. It's something that sounds good on a talk show, but in real life it doesn't mean anything.
Trust me, I tried cases against public defenders. They had better resources than we did. They were paid more than we do. So there's a lot of truth to that. But let me ask you this, Frank. 1 January, I guess if you're elected, your term will take over. What's the first thing that you will do as a county legislator for District 1, assuming you're elected?
The first thing I would do is ask the county executive for a meeting. I have met him several times during this campaign. He's an affable gentleman, and I think his heart is in the right place.
Yep.
Now, he was at an event here in Peekskill where the seniors were having their picnic, and my mother actually is my biggest fan and supporter, and she went up and
You would hope
introduced
so.
herself, and he shook her hand and he said some very nice things about me, that Frank seems to be a nice guy and blah blah blah, things that you would expect him to say to my mother. The next time I saw him, I shook his hand. I said, thank you for those kind words that you said to my mother. And he goes, I meant every word of it. If you are elected, I look forward to working with you. And I say, I will never take cheap shots at you. The shots that I take at you are going to be based on strong policy differences, and hopefully we'll never get to that point where our differences are so strong that I can't help attacking you. I'm going to be not a bomb thrower, but I'm going to be the guy bringing up the if they can have 17 votes to my 1, and I will, before I vote, I will get up and make a speech on why I'm voting the way I vote. So my first thing would be to reach out to the county executive. We're going to deal with him for the next 2 years. I would reach out to the majority leader, just introduce myself, and to the Democratic caucus. I don't know any of them except Catherine Borgia, who represents Peekskill, a part of Peekskill. And I get to know my other Republican counterparts, if there are any left, and introduce them and talk about how we can, we're not going to be a circus like we have in D.C. We're going to be principled. We're going to talk about policy, and we're going to talk about why we're for things and why we're against things. And we can show people that there are sane people still in politics.
So the party thing doesn't matter to you. I mean, it gets so dug in. And just by way of statistics, and I was thinking about this today before you come on, when you ran for mayor, all the people who ran with you for council, I believe only 2 of them were Republicans. The rest of them were Democrats or independents. So that seems to be a trend, I think, in your political life.
Bipartisanship is a key. When you even if I had them, I've never had a majority in my 2 terms as mayor, and certainly we're not going to get a majority on the county board. So I think I'm well suited to work as a minority member. And my mentor George Pataki always said it's easier to run as a minority party candidate, because you can always point to somebody and say he's doing this wrong, that wrong, this wrong, that wrong. If I was in charge, I would do this, this, and this. And I'll never forget when George was in the assembly, if I can just tell you this quick story.
We call them C-stories.
I had, my twins were born. I had 1 child, and then 2 years later we had twins. And there was a story in U.S. News and World Report that I think it was Michigan was the first state in the country to introduce what they called education futures. If you paid the cost of a college education then, at that time, when your kid was of college age, they would be able to go to college free. But you paid, like, who would not want to pay today's rates for their kids to go to SUNY Albany, who aren't going to go to college for another 18 or 19 years? And so that's what I was looking to do. I wrote a note to George Pataki, and I said, you should consider introducing this as legislation. I'm sure you'll get a lot of money up front from people wanting to lock in today's price for 20 years from now. And he wrote back to me and he said, I think it's a great idea. And he never introduced it as a minority member of the assembly. And I wrote to him again when he was in the Senate, and he never introduced it. And I remember talking to him, because I see him quite often, how come you never introduced that? And he goes, I can count. So, but it is important to bring up good ideas and try to get people to work with you.
Yeah.
Well, the whole trick of it is like you said, it's about your county, your town, your city, and you're not really looking at party lines. You're looking at a person for what they can bring, as to your city to make it better, and to do things that really works for where you live. And I think that's people try to separate party now and say, well, you're this kind of party, you're that kind of, but it's really about the person. And if the person's there, it doesn't. I mean, we never voted really in lockstep with a party line. We did what we did just because we wanted to make sure that the city got the best it could with the decisions we were making. It wasn't about what we could do for our party.
In your role as a county legislator, obviously as mayor of Peekskill problems were your problems. But you're dealing with a different demographic, I think, in each of these towns. You have Peekskill, Cortland, and Yorktown.
Sure.
What do you see as specific problems that you can address on the county level for each of those municipalities? Cortland, including some of the villages, Buchanan, I guess, is included as well.
Well, first of all, the closure of Indian Point is going to have a devastating effect on northern Westchester, Buchanan in particular,
sure.
and the Henrik Hudson School District. They have a lot of meetings. I've sat through a lot of them. They go on for hours and hours. What do you feel about this? What do you feel about that? And we should do this. And should we contact this center? And they talk, and it's been almost a year or more than a year now, and no concrete proposals have come from Albany as to how this district and Buchanan are going to be made, maybe not whole, but how are they going to, they should be.
How are they going to make adjustments?
They have to make adjustments to their, 50% of their income in Buchanan, they're facing a 50% tax increase.
That's incredible.
And then to punish them for not keeping a 2% cap is just punitive in my view. So that's the first thing for that area. Cortland and Yorktown, I started my day one Saturday with my wife in Buchanan, and we worked the district, and we had to take Route 6 all the way out to Jefferson Valley, and it took over an hour to get out there. I know it's a state road, but there's a lot the county can do when they walk in the DOT office and pound their fist on the desk and say, we need help. The Lake Mohegan, Lexington Avenue intersection, the traffic is backed up all the way down to the Home Depot.
Sure.
That's not right. And then you get into people cutting in the line and going up the...
And that's been like that for years.
And there's
too.
condos,
just not right.
there's condos going in there, right?
Yeah.
So it's even going to be worse.
Yeah, as part of the settlement for more affordable housing. So it's the transportation, the infrastructure, and those are some of the things that are prime on my list. Clean up the parks, the county parks in Yorktown, Cortland, and obviously Peekskill, Blue Mountain, to make them like your own backyard. I wouldn't have my kids on these unsafe swing sets, and I wouldn't want to have a picnic on a barbecue pit that hasn't been cleaned in 10 years, and a picnic table that has mud all over it. I mean, it's not hard to get a guy out there to clean. Bring a hose, wash it down, clean it. Plant some grass seed, and just take some pride in that. It's a beautiful area, and it's not kept well.
Yeah.
And it's a real disgrace.
And it's important for people. Some people have backyards and so forth. Some people don't. Going to a park is a big deal.
We got a lot of bike riders there, mountain bike guys.
Sure, and it's an attraction from the city as well. So, now that we got you, your former mayor of Peekskill, we kind of focused a little bit on county issues, and I wonder if we could just spend a couple of minutes with you on your past as mayor of Peekskill. A couple issues have come up, and a lot of the source material we do for our show, we scrub social media. We find out who's saying what and so forth and so on. One of the big topics is coming up, the Fleischman Pier and the development of the waterfront. And there was a suggestion that during your tenure as mayor that the Fleischman Pier project involved another study, and you were death on studies and you were all opposed to that. Do you have any comments on your view and what you were involved with in connection with the Fleischman Pier?
Of course. My dad lived in San Diego for 30 years before he passed away in San Diego. Every time we went out there, he took me to the San Diego Pier. It was a great attraction, right into the ocean, had a snack bar at the end, people fishing off both sides. I had a vacation home in Naples, Florida. Naples has a pier. You go down to the beach, you're on the beach, you're hungry, you get up, you walk on the pier, and there's a snack bar at the end of the pier, and you know something? Nobody died, nobody had a heart attack, nobody cared. The beach was cleaned every day. when they wanted to do yet another study on the Fleischman's Pier, I went berserk because in the 6 years prior to my taking office, some of our financial problems were
doing studies.
studies after study after study after study. Did a study on Central Avenue. It's going to be the connector to Peekskill. What should we have here? Well, why don't we ask the people that own the property what they want to put? What's their idea? What's their dream for their property? We don't need the city to spend $75,000 to tell a private property owner you should build an ice cream factory here or a restaurant here. Zepp's just went out of business.
Yep.
And
Sure.
that was a 5-star restaurant, New York Times 5-star restaurant. And location means something. Where it's not easily accessible, where there's no parking.
It's in the dark out.
Maybe a restaurant wasn't the best idea for Central Avenue. So Fleischman's Pier, I don't need a study to tell me. It's been there for 100 years. It's on solid footings, the moorings. That area can be dredged out relatively cheaply, and make the pier twice as wide as it is now, and put a snack bar out there. Put it out for an RFP. I'm sure you'll get somebody who will bid $200,000 or $300,000 to have a small restaurant or a snack bar out there and operate it 12 months a year or even 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
And just do it. You'll see how many people show up down there. And why can't we have a clamshell bandstand down there for our events? Why do we need this? The Peekskill, the trailer thing they set up as the
Showmobile.
The showmobile.
Yeah.
That's a nice. If you're going to have a show, in outer space and you need it. But down by the riverfront, we should have a first-class, clamshell band. You see the one in Australia. I'm not suggesting it should be that big, but I went to Daytona Beach as a college senior for spring break. Mm-hmm. Daytona Beach has a clamshell thing, and they had shows every night. People got up there and just played music. It would just to turn that area. I mean, we've made a lot of progress in our riverfront, don't get me wrong, but I had great plans. Nobody wanted to listen to me. They wanted to spend $125,000 on yet another study, and the study sits someplace in City Hall collecting dust.
But that also ties in, I think, to your suggestion about the parks. Blue Mountain, if that was a very achievable destination park, you got it, all ties in together. So
Yeah.
I think that's good thinking. The other thing, finances. Well, discussion online. The city, its Moodys rating improved. And
You're welcome.
yeah, you're welcome too. But the study was premised on years 14, 15, 16, and 17.
Sure.
And
that's
you
what
can
we were in.
dispute, the council had an input into that as well. But your comments on that?
All the Moody's rating is, I was a big finance guy. I was concerned first and foremost. I don't think people realize how desperate the finances were. We were, within a few months or weeks of being taken over by the state controller's office. Mm-hmm. It was very bad
We were
situation.
on Dire Straits, yeah, I remember.
So, I'm not taking the credit for it. I mean, whatever we did, we needed Democratic support. It was a bipartisan effort. People worked together because they knew we were in tough shape. Yeah. And my thing was, we can't tax our way out of this problem. We have to grow our way out of it.
Yeah.
Peekskill had 6 years of a declining tax base when I took office, and it was just not a good situation. Your tax base has to increase 2 to 4% a year just to stay even. So every year for 6 years, we had to pay more just to stay even, more taxes, or bonding. So I said, no bonding, no studies, no outside counsels, no special counsels, and stop the litigation that was all over the place.
No, I mean, the thing I'm hearing now, and people that work in City Hall and stuff, that finances aren't really that good. And then, obviously, when you ask anybody that's like the city manager, they'll tell you everything is fine. But I think we learned our lesson with that when they were telling us everything was good to Paramount, and they were just doing renovations. So
our time's running a little bit short. I see the man in the side
Sure.
there waving around. Frank, 2 minutes. What would you like to say to the folks watching?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you both for having me here. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about past achievements and what I think can be achieved on the county level. I want to specifically talk to the people in Yorktown, Cortland, Buchanan, and Montrose who may know me from name recognition, but not what we accomplished here in Peekskill. I married a woman from Carmel, Mayapack rather, and she said the only time she ever came to Peekskill was for DMV. If you're that person and you haven't noticed the changes in Peekskill, if you have noticed the changes in Peekskill, that was our administration that got it done. I think, regardless of the numbers of Democrats and Republicans, I think people of goodwill will sit together and work together to a common goal. And that is to keep Westchester County the most sought after real estate where people want to live and work and raise their families in the entire state, and mostly part of, this half of the country, literally. We have snow, and that's the only reason California may beat us on desires to live there. But I think that we can do a lot better if we stop the national politicking that goes on the county board. We don't need our own foreign policy. We don't need our own immigration policy. Concentrate on what you were elected to do it, and do the right thing, and you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you tried to do the right thing.
Okay. Another chapter to be written. Frank, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate it.
Bobby.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Frank.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
No problem. Thank you.
As promised, the second segment of our show, Inside City Hall. It's been our custom to discuss some of the goings-on in City Hall, some commentary on what's going on, some questions for our viewers to raise at the end of our show. Last time we filmed, Joe, we filmed with Dr. Mauricio over at the Uriah Hill School.
Yes,
Did
I remember.
Great segment with him. And of course, that's now timely because a lot of stuff he said in that segment is up for in the bond issue right now at the school.
Sure.
But inside City Hall, a lot going on. First thing that comes to mind over the summer, the Honeywell project was before the council, and the idea is a good idea to try and make some of the city's buildings energy efficient.
More energy efficient, sure.
Yeah, but I think one of the biggest problems, it was a project that developed kind of out of the sight of the city council, and so when it came to fruition, it absolutely made nobody happy.
Well, I think, you saw, I think people on both sides of the party line come up and complain about it because, you're spending $4 million and you don't really know what you're getting for $4 million. And, some of the windows, they were just plastic, junky windows, supposedly, and people were complaining about that, and truly so. I mean, you just don't write a check for $4 million and say, well, we don't care what we're getting.
Well, guess what? We did.
We did. Well, I think, to me, the sad part is that a lot of people came up and spoke and said, just, hold back for a bit and then see what you're really getting. Make sure you're crossing all your I's and your T's together, and make sure everything is right. And they kind of ignored it. I guess they just said we're going to do what we want to do. I think, which is wasn't the best decision. Even a former mayor went up there, and complained about it, and I was surprised that she was even complaining about it. And when you see that tells you that it was a bad decision that they made going forward.
To be sure, the concept of implementing these energy efficient changes to the buildings and basically the amount of the savings is what would pay for it over the span
Correct.
of time.
That's right.
The problem, we saw a lot of commentators come up that the premises or the assumptions that were made for the energy savings were invalid. It had like the Paramount open only 2 nights a week, things like that. One of the things that caught my eye, some of the energy improvements are being done in the DPW garage and the maintenance garage down on South Street. Well, that's okay. Today's October 1st. The city budget was just released, and part of the plan in the city budget, the city manager allocated $600,000 to move the city garage and the maintenance garage. So they are buildings that don't have a 20-year shelf life.
That's right, and the problem is they're doing all this stuff, and and it's kind of like there was no planning to it, like you said. Yeah. And most of the stuff, a lot of it's LED bulbs and stuff like that, and like City Hall is getting windows, and I think they're doing a big heating system and all that stuff over at the Paramount or an AC unit or something like that. But still, I mean, the return, I believe, I looked at the numbers, and the return is not there. So over the amount of years that you get for the money you're investing or the money you're losing. And I kind of watched that whole segment where the Honeywell guy was there, and he was just let's get this over with. I want my money. And and you could see it in them, and they were like, "Come on up here, you could explain." And there was a lot of people had legitimate questions about about certain parts of the contract. And he kind of answered them very vaguely. Sure. He wasn't on the money, but I saw a guy there who was like, just give me the money because that's all I want.
Well,
and that's why I saw it. And
to be sure, Honeywell is really the leader in the industry. And
I mean, sure. I
go into my home, all my thermostats, all my controls are Honeywell. But an interesting thing about that contract, Joe, is this: last year's city budgeted $700,000 in the capital budget. And what was that for? windows
Uh-huh.
and air conditioning in City Hall.
That's right.
So we took money out of our pockets,
Sure.
the tax levy, $700,000, about 4 points on your tax bill, and then they went ahead and borrowed to do that project.
That's what I'm saying. Even when I was there on the council, I remember part of that project when we did the LED lighting and stuff like that. And that's most of it. I mean, some of that's going to save you, no doubt it's going to save you energy. But for the money you spend now, I mean, I can't see why they didn't have some of the people from some of the DPW workers come in and screw a couple of light bulbs in over time.
Yeah.
They would have saved a lot more money.
Yeah.
In the long run, $4 million is a lot of money for a little city to be spending.
Yeah.
And I think it's overkill. But
Well, I think the concept too that got a lot of people irritated. We have a conservation advisory council, and that's what those people do. I mean, they're not specialists in it. It's an avocation, but a lot of them know their stuff. They were kind of left out of the process a little bit as this thing was developed.
Correct.
So
That's
that
right.
would have been helpful. Now, you can take or reject their recommendations, but they really didn't have the kind of input in it that you would expect they should.
it should have been, and again, it goes back to, it's open government. It should have been open, discussed. And I know everybody has a different opinion on everything, so it's always hard to say, but if you have half a brain or you have a brain, you're going to calculate some of that stuff and see why is it costing us so much money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And is it the right thing to do? Like you said, I mean, they spent money for the DPW garage, and also now they're moving it. So
It's an interesting thing. We're filming on October 1st, and this show will probably air around October 8th or so. Back on September 23rd at a COW meeting, Gene Friedman came in with the city comptroller, Ann Scaglione, and she comes, they made a report on the next phase of the Honeywell project is the installation of windows in City Hall. Well, it turns out that they really didn't have the right windows. Gene disapproved the windows. They weren't suitable. And we're talking about a building that was built during the Depression era. I don't know if it's a WPA project or not, probably was. And I know Sepp Spendenhauer and his husband Brian Fassett
Yes.
were really death on the idea. This is a historic building. Let's be careful about
what we do. I agree.
Yeah.
And it's always good to be cautious about what you're going to spend. And when you have a building like that that's
Sure.
represent your city, and what are you going to put in there? You're going to put in junk in there. Is it going to last 3 years and I got to redo it again in 5 years, 10 years, or whatever? So that's something that needed to be looked into to make sure you're getting quality for all that money you're spending, and I don't think all that was done.
Yeah. Again, the concept was good, and the idea and the savings, but the execution of the contract is something that left a little bit desired, and I think all across the board among the city, the conservationists, people on all sides of the aisle had some significant problems, both with aspects of the contract and how it was executed.
And the other thing is, a lot of people were pretty engaged during that council meeting. And luckily what happened is they sat for 2 weeks, no meetings went by. And then when the meeting did come by, it was at the senior center at 10 o'clock, so nobody can go there and complain about it for the second time and say it's a bad decision. Yeah. So they voted it right through. And I think that was a really bad decision. I mean, the mayor was arguing. I think during the one where everybody came up, the previous mayor, I think Mary Foster was there, and and she wasn't happy with it. And for her to come up and say, this isn't right, and then Mayor Rainey was like, no, we're doing this tonight. And even though some of the other council members backed up a little bit because they saw the pressure they were getting from everybody in the audience.
Yeah,
and then they waited 2 weeks, and then everybody was gone. And nobody was there to fight them, so they kind of just passed it through.
Well, we are where we are, and I think going forward, we borrowed the money. They closed on the lease, I guess, or the loan, whatever it is, and the different phases of the project really need to get a little more oversight. And that brings up another question. We're a city, small city, but right now we don't have a city engineer. We don't have somebody with the expertise in these things.
I can tell you what's correct. Yeah.
I mean, we have Gene Friedman, who is a star in City Hall, and Ann Scaglione, both of them. And they shouldn't be deciding what kind of windows for City Hall. And so
that's why it's it's in the charter that you have to have an engineer. Yeah. That's part of the city, and you have street projects that an engineer needs to know and can tell you what needs to be done. And when you lack that, it starts to show in other places on some of the projects you do. So.
It sure does. And one of the things that, again, this is October 1st, we're filming. About 2 hours ago, while I was on the train coming home, the city budget was posted on the website. And the city budget is calling for a 1% tax increase. One of the aspects of the city budget that I found interesting is in the budget letter, the city manager wants to increase, well, they've got contractually obligated raises for the blue-collar employees of the city, 2%, I think it said.
Sure.
He wants to initiate larger increases for some of the professional staff. And I think they deserve it. They probably haven't had raises in a while. And,
It's been a while.
you know, companies and private business, you want to hang on to your management people if they're good.
That's
because that gives continuity to your organization. But if you remember last year, the only change that was made from the city manager's budget to the council budget was they cut the raises for the professional staff.
Yeah, well, it has to come up for a vote, and so the city manager presents the budget.
Yep.
And then and it's up to the council to say, well, we're happy with it or not.
Yep.
And they can try to put their own budget in if they want,
Yeah.
or corrections, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
the
mean,
only correction.
one of the bigger problems they have is that they lost probably so many quality people over time, like their DPW, which was an engineer,
Yeah.
Brent Van Zandt.
Brent Van
And
Zandt.
he did a great job, and they let him go they didn't even offer him any money. He asked, I'm going to go somewhere else. Will you match that? And they said no. I didn't even give him an offer, I heard, so he left.
But again, it's a manager style. That's the thing. And looking again at the city budget, the comment I made before about the $700,000 that we got taxed for in last year's budget for something that we went ahead and borrowed the money for. Looking at this year's budget, they used a lot of money out of the unrestricted reserve to stabilize taxes.
To stabilize, correct.
Now, they've been that route before, and before you took over, and Frank
that's what
Catalina, the state comptroller, criticized him for doing that.
Oh yeah, sure. I could tell you when we were there, we did everything we could to bring money in and stop borrowing money. But from what I'm hearing now is that everybody at DPW, like the guys and mechanics in the garage, they're not allowed to spend a dime. Mm-hmm. They're not allowed to buy anything unless it goes through control now because they have no money, I believe. That's what I'm hearing. Now, you're probably going to hear an argument and say that's not true.
Yeah.
But, you go back to the argument when they said, well, the Paramount was just being worked on.
Yeah.
And that wasn't true. The guy just left.
Yeah,
So,
we don't know what's going on with the
So,
Paramount.
you're not really getting anybody being truthful
Yeah.
coming out of City Hall. It's always like a dance, and they don't really tell you until
One of
they
the
have
things
to.
that's very true about the city budget is the Paramount loses money.
Yeah.
It
I
makes it
I
less
could tell
money
you,
than it spends.
it's always been since I think I can remember it. So it's a hard place to manage. I will say that.
Sure.
And it's hard to bring in money because of the size of it and stuff like that. So, and to bring in quality shows, you have to pay for that, and that's where you lose
Well, they're
money.
doing that now, but that's
Yeah.
being funded privately by
Correct.
I think the Lanza Foundation is involved.
Yeah.
And I get the idea the city doesn't want to make necessarily profit on it, but they should be able to recoup.
Well,
more
just
of
to
their
even out. If they can break even, which they don't ever break.
It's a good incentive for the city. So these are a lot of questions going on in town. One last thing, we got Election Day coming up in 5 weeks. Early voting is coming to town at at City Hall. Great concept. People don't have time on Election Day or can't take off work or just more convenient to do early voting. They did post a schedule. It's on the city's website. Basically, they're alternating it. It goes for about 9 days, beginning on October 26th, and it ends on Sunday, November 3rd. Different days. It's I believe it's 8 to 4 on one day, 12 to 8 the next, and they alternate like that. They had a meeting last night. I didn't attend it, but I heard some feedback from it. A lot of concerns and a lot of questions about security of the ballots.
That's true. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And who's funding? Who's going to fund all this for staff to be there?
Well, the
And,
county.
well, the county's going to put it.
We'll ask that question, of our county representatives, so we can get that. But it's a good concept, but one of those things that the proof is in the pudding. So anyway, a lot of questions. Another chapter to be written. It is election season, so we're talking about a little question. Some of these questions, these issues that have come up. If you have any comments, please let us know on Facebook or on YouTube, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns. So thank you very much. Have a good night.